very key charity for Harry. He's very senior in it. He's still a trustee. It's African Parks. And what it is, there's been a scandal which has been exposed by the Mail on Sunday and other outlets as well, where rangers who work for this conservation charity have been involved in terrible things, torture, rape, abuse, this type of thing. Essentially what this conservation charity does is they buy up vast areas of Africa in order to conserve the wildlife within them. So that's great. But within these vast areas, there are African people, tribal people, in this case the controversy surrounds the Baka people, who have hunted on this land for centuries, since time immemorial. And then suddenly these people are being beaten or attacked by these rangers who are now in charge of this area. So it's a really interesting subject that touches on, I would say, sometimes sort of colonialist views of Africa that we come in and take over.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Harry has not really said much on this other than that he's spoken to the chair of the charity.
Well, a charity that's concerned with tribespeople survival contacted him with these allegations last year. And what Harry has said, that at that time he passed on the claims immediately to the appropriate people at the charity, that was the chairman, the president, I think, and we didn't hear much more. So it wasn't until the Mail on Sunday picked up on it in January that it became a bigger issue. But I think it's important to address, and certainly next week we're going to see a very regal type tour of Nigeria. I think it's going to be great for their brand as a sort of alternative royal family.
Well, but indeed, that seems like the deliberate move sometimes, doesn't it?
I think, so. In my opinion, it does. I think they want to burnish this idea of being an alternative royal family, and what better way than a royal tour? And I think also you'll see a lot of their allies stressing how next week's trip will be different from trips by the royal family, such as the Prince and Princess of Wales to the West Indies, when they were criticised for some of the imagery. And I think definitely Harry and Meghan want to give a different image, that they're there for Africa, which is a continent that's very close to Harry's heart.
I would add to that, actually, that a lot of the people I speak to who obviously know Harry and Meghan of old, there's a lot of wry smiles on their faces this week, because of this idea of they're going on this big trip. There's going to be some cultural events, there's going to be Invictus events, and the wry smile that all they did was say the way the royals did things are not the right way to do things, and yet they're kind of mimicking that in their own trip. I think there's a little schadenfreude there.
Before his trip to Africa with Meghan, Prince Harry flew into the UK, but there was no chance this time for a meeting with his father. Richard Eden and Charlotte Griffiths pick up the story.
Well, it did come as a surprise to some, because last weekend there were lots of reports, front page reports, that Harry was going to meet his father.
Except on the Mail, we will.
Exactly, certainly not in the Daily Mail. Yeah. And then, so it became slightly embarrassing when Harry's spokesman put out the statement saying that, his father couldn't find time, and there was a bit of an edge to that statement.
Is that a weird thing to do, to make an official announcement in that way?
Well, they said they were just addressing, because they've had so many questions about it. They were addressing that directly. Otherwise, they may have felt that it would overshadow the trip completely. But it is very striking indeed.
Charlotte, we know the King's very busy. We've been discussing it not 10 minutes ago, and they're not a typical family. But in a rare week when they're in the same country, 2 miles apart, it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It does speak volumes. The fact that he had 8,000 people at the Buckingham Palace garden party and there wasn't room for one more is really sad. Actually, this is the first time I've been truly, truly saddened by that dispute between them, because, of course, any king can make 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour for his son. He's the King of England. He calls the shots on every level. But the time just wasn't available. And also, William was around the corner in Windsor doing an investiture. There was no time for his brother. I mean, that's slightly more predictable. But just to think of them all in the same sort of region of, West London, more or less, and they didn't see each other. It's really, really sad, actually, I think.
Now, Richard, we talked earlier about the unexpected positive consequences of Charles's cancer diagnosis, while your fellow Royal Richard Kay, wrote this week that the King's illness has, if anything, added to the estrangement between Charles and Harry. Why do you think he would say that?
No, it's an interesting point that some have made, and I've written about it in my newsletter this week. And I think it's the fact now that the king just doesn't want distractions. He's become even more focused on getting his work done.
His son's a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, people I spoke to this week said
awkward.
He just brings unhappiness, he brings drama. I mean, remember the conversations we've had in this programme before where we were talking about the King's birthday, and that became a whole drama that they were, you know, from California we were getting statements about Harry was going to be speaking to his father on the phone, and then we heard all the Christmas Day. There was huge interest in it, so there's that. But also it taps into this wider issue of trust. All of us in the media at the moment face this issue of how do we deal with AI and the ability for anyone, which is being promoted by the mobile phone companies, to change your photos. You can go out now, someone can send us a photo from the street, do some adjusting and send it to us, and it might not be quite actually what happened.
Yeah.
So those agencies, just like other organisations like us, have policies now that we don't use it. But obviously there was a lot of sympathy from all of us towards Catherine over it.
Yeah.
I think it's worth, sorry to interrupt, but pointing out that some people are asking, well, how does this differ from all the kind of heavily edited photographs we see celebrities putting on their Instagram accounts? And it's a valid question. But as you were rightly saying, Richard, and I don't think people probably understand this, is that, yes, the picture was put up on their social media by Kensington Palace to start off with, but then 5 minutes later it was issued by the Palace to these news agencies to distribute in the normal way as a news image. And as you rightly say, they are subject to very strict rules because people are so worried about the use of picture manipulation and AI, to the extent, and I didn't realise this until this week, they're not even allowed to put out a picture of someone that's had just the red eye from the flash rubbed out of it.
Oh, really?
They can't even do that. It has to be a really authentic news moment. I mean, people do maybe adjust the tone of a picture, you know, maybe lighten a few shadows, but that is it. They can't put out an image that, say, a hand appears to have been moved or something like that. They're just not allowed to do that. So they had no choice.
Shows how
really.
good Kate must be as a photographer, because she, until now, because of her illness, has taken all those photos. Has taken a lot of her own photos. And obviously, if you can't edit them, then she's done a really good job. And I think the other problem is that William was taking the picture and maybe didn't do a very good job. And it had to be tweaked, you know.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Sussexes found themselves downgraded. Richard's Eden and Kay explain why here.
Yes, this is all a bit unfortunate. It's the they're quite slow to do these things, but it's the upgrading of the official royal website, and obviously Prince Harry, as King Charles's younger son, would have a very prominent position, but he dropped down after quitting royal duties. And now it's the next stage of their humiliation. They've been pushed pretty much down to the bottom, just given a joint entry of Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And it depends how you look at it, actually, because on my mobile phone, at least they were still above Prince Andrew. So he was there just below them. But if you look on or certainly on my PC, he was next to Prince Andrew. So they're there right at the bottom, but they're just a sort of embarrassment now, kind of hanging on. But obviously it highlights the very strange position they're in, where, you know, it's the King's younger son is now no longer part of the firm. So is it the royal family, you know, or is it the firm? It's a tricky one.
I just would like real clarification for anyone who doesn't understand. Is this simply about the line of succession, or is it something else, Richard Kay?
Oh, no, it's not to do with the line of succession. I mean, Harry remains very much quite high up in the line of succession. You'll forgive me, I can't remember what number he is.
I think people call him 5 on Twitter.
Number 5. He comes after Prince Louis.
Right.
So they can't take that away from him, but Richard's absolutely right. I mean, he has been downgraded. As we know, the palace never do things in haste, and people have been clamouring for this change for months, if not years.
So what's taken so long?
They don't do things in haste. They take their time. They do it when they think they can slip it out and it won't get noticed. The only trouble is, right now, anything the palace does gets noticed.
Yes.
And these things get interpreted in certain ways. But basically, Richard's right. Harry, no longer a working royal. His wife, not working at all as a working royal. They've slipped right down the list of those prominent royal family members who actually go out and do good deeds on our behalf.
Now, I'm sure that somewhere in the back of their minds in Montecito they were expecting this, but it must sting.
I just think, if you think who's above them, you've got, cousins of Queen Elizabeth, the Duke of Gloucester, the Duke of Kent, and they're above the son of the king. So it's a strange situation. But that's what happens when you quit royal duties. Yes, he's still in the line of succession, he's still a Councillor of State, but he's no longer taking part. So the idea is someone who looks at the royal family website would be, who are they? What do they do? They want to find out more information. They don't want to find out about celebrities in California.
In March, social media was buzzing with conspiracy theories over the whereabouts of Catherine. She became the butt of jokes from celebrities, and even President Biden's team was asked about her. All this was stopped by the shocking news that Catherine was being treated for cancer, revealed in an incredibly moving video message. Here Rebecca reveals how the message was delivered, and Richard Eden gives his reaction.
Friday was again one of those really remarkable and unexpected days in my career covering the royals. I had actually heard a week or so before